Sports build champions and leaders, but every champion has moments of struggle, pressure, anxiety, burnout, and those moments deserve real support. PAX Health is proud to sponsor the New Jersey Lacrosse podcast because they believe mental health care should be available when you need it, as you need it. Therapy and psychiatric services for kids, teens, communities, and families. Telehealth and in-person appointments are available within 48 hours. PAX Health, people helping people. Visit pax.health. That's PAX.health. JAG Physical Therapy, providing rehabilitative recovery from sports and soft tissue injuries to knee, foot, ankle, hip, shoulder, elbow, and back injuries. Schedule your appointment with JAG Physical Therapy today and meet their experienced team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, athletic trainers, and exercise physiologists invested in your full recovery. Get back the life you love at JAG Physical Therapy, the most awarded physical therapy provider in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, just visit jagpt.com. That's JAGPT.com. Lacrosse families, meet Orgo, the calendar app that actually thinks like a sports parent. Orgo syncs with team apps you already use and enriches schedules with real-world logistics. Every event shows travel times, early arrival buffers, carpool assignments, conflict alerts, and time-specific weather so you know what gear to pack. Get your athletes on it too. Orgo teaches time literacy, an executive skill for life. One subscription, whole family. Code LAX25 is 25% off. Just $44 locks in sanity for the whole year. Visit www.orgohq.com. That's www.orgohq.com. This is the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Block.
I'm Bill Farr.
I'm Anthony Terranova.
And this here is Gil Swenson. Welcome to the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. Welcome. Indeed, boys. How you doing? Keith Glock here with you. Proud to be joined by my compatriots in crime. How we doing?
Good to see you guys again after another great week of lacrosse.
Missed you guys last week.
Yes, good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
Is it
too soon, Billy Tharp?
And just like that, as Tharp sits there waiting for what's about to come to him, we'll start with the opening face-off. If I'm the face-off player in this imaginary scenario, let's just say I win the clamp and I'm directing this thing right over to the wing. And Gil, go ahead, scoop that ground ball and take us away here.
I'm taking this on a straight fast break, 2-on-1 with my boy Nova over here, right down Billy Tharp's throat. So I missed last week.
I think that was a really great analogy you just made, Keith. That was awesome. That was like the coolest thing you've ever done. And yeah, I did just cut you off on purpose. That's called early slide.
That's okay. I missed last week, and I'm glad that I did, based on what I was hearing afterwards. Somebody on this podcast decided to, on of all days, Easter, proclaim himself Jesus for being correct. What, Bill? Why are you shaking your head? Did you not?
No, I said similar to Jesus, I rose from the grave.
Similar. Anyway, similar to Jesus on Easter, because he was correct about a Bridgewater Pingree ranking. And before we get into any of this, none of these teams need to be dragged through the mud by any means. I love the Pingree boys. I love the BR boys. This is directed at my boy Bill over here just for his rankings. How'd it feel this week, Billy?
I don't know what you want me what you're looking for me to say here.
You take Pingree and you jump them from unranked to, was it 11, Tony?
I believe it was
11
10.
or 12, something, maybe even 10.
I believe it was 10.
Okay. Unranked to 10 for beating Bridgewater by what? 5-4, 6-5?
4-3.
4-3, even better. Again, nothing against these teams whatsoever. Love all these teams. But the process of the ranking here, a couple weeks ago, moving Pingree from unranked to 10 for a 4-3 win. It was never about Bridgewater, right, Tony?
It was never about Bridgewater.
Never about Bridgewater. So we bumped Bridgewater partly because of this process. And
You guys dropped them to unranked. You literally unranked them.
Okay, again, it was never about Bridgewater. We had to counteract your insanity, Jesus, with the Pingree situation. And then you talk a lot of smack about my namesake with an extra L. And then they go out and beat Pingree, your boys, your number 10, and you get a little quiet. You get a little quiet. And you don't drop them all that much. So we're going
They
to get
dropped them
into
to like
that a little bit
17.
more.
They dropped
Huh?
7 spots.
You were close to not even ranking Gil.
Yeah, and then Gil
You
beat the
correct
shit out of
yourself. You
Ridge.
corrected yourself. I'll give you that. But at one point, you had Pingree ranked still. You had Gil unranked post Gil win over Pingree. And then Pingree goes out, kind of squeaks by an ugly one against Hunterdon Central. You still got him pretty fairly high.
Okay. So
Tony?
I think
No.
listen,
We're still on offense here. The 2-on-1 is still on offense. Tony, I dish it over to you.
You literally, I don't think you could have said it really much better myself. You, all you did was you moved Gil St. Bernard's up, of course, all the way ahead of Pingree, and you did as little as possible to move Pingree down. A team right now who, again, has find a couple wins, but what are they averaging? 4.5 goals a game right now. So really tough to really justify after 1 week of them beating some teams that aren't even in our top 20 at the time. Now, Ridge, that definitely is not necessarily looking like a good win anymore
Quoting
by
a
any
Bernard's
stretch.
good win.
Yeah, it's continues just to kind of baffle us. Again, we all agree that Pingree should be in the top 20. Just the way they're how they've gone into it and how it has gone down has been a little awkward to say the least.
okay, can I speak now? Am I allowed?
Praise be.
So I dropped Pingree 6 spots this week, which Anthony, you dropped them 5, Gil, you dropped them 7. So right in literally in between you guys with how much I dropped them. And listen, the Pingree win over Bridgewater happens in the first week of the season when literally everyone's oh no. Okay, so as we've talked about, right? What's your criteria for ranking? Okay, my criteria is wins predicated. Okay, so when Pingree wins over Bridgewater, okay, Bridgewater was my preseason, I think number 10-ish team, right? Jump up the rankings. You beat the number 10 team, okay, in a way that I thought was a good win. And now all of a sudden, right? Like all of a sudden, okay, so at the time of the win, right? Gil was 1-5 with their only in-state win over Hillsborough and a loss to Bridgewater also. Okay. And then they beat Pingree. And I said to you guys, look, I don't know what to make of a 2-5 team. I cited Pingree's wins over Ridge and Bernards, which, again, those teams are looking I don't know. I don't want to speak poorly of those teams, like you said. But and then all of a sudden, I said you guys over a text message. You'll play Ridge this weekend. When I want to see the score. And they crushed them. It wasn't competitive, right? 12-2, not competitive. I said there's no reason to not move Gil up and Pingree deserved to be dropped, rightfully so. So that's the movement. And again, it was because you guys, whether it's over text message or on here, is like, oh man, like beating Bridgewater doesn't mean anything. They barely beat Manasquan, or excuse me, they barely beat Homedale. They, blah blah blah, and and then all of a sudden last week, my whole point was that like beating Bridgewater meant something, and that's why I thought Pingree rightfully deserved to move up. The thing that I had no response to, and I acknowledged at the time, was then like Nova said, okay, if you feel that way, why do you not have Madison above them? Because you had Lakes above Bridgewater, whatever it was on the back end. I know that was point taken. I should have flipped them. Then you guys probably would have had a few less holes to poke in. But now at this point, right, we are we are at a point where there's more results. There's much more data. And listen, like at the end of the day, right? Gil's 8 games into their season. Okay, they've had 2 games where they've scored. Their 2 lowest scoring games. One was against Episcopal, who is a top 5 team in the country, and now Pingree. So like Pingree, still did its job defensively. And if they squeak out a couple more goals, no duh, that game looks different. But um,
If only
again,
they scored more goals and won the game, Tony.
no, I know that's what I'm saying. Like, no duh, but like it's not like Pingree got destroyed by Gill either. It's like 7-4 is a competitive game. It's not 4-3, right? It's not, Pingree squeaky by Bernards in overtime. Doesn't look as good as it did, when Bernards was playing a little bit better. But like I said, the how I use my top 20 is totally it's heavily, heavily, heavily weighed on your wins. In the early season, the only data we had to go off of was Pingree beat Bridgewater. I thought that was a good win. So, yeah, okay, Pingree lost this week. I don't coach there anymore. I don't have any tie to those teams.
Listen,
So,
that's
like,
all fine and well, Billy. My problem was you coming on this podcast, sponsored by Q4 Lacrosse, proclaiming yourself Jesus in my absence on Easter.
well, hey, I'm here. I showed up today. You talked a big game about how you were gonna do some dirty things to me, and I don't feel dirty. I feel clean still. So I think that was a good spirited debate. But like I think like you said, it's like, you know, was jumping Pingree up to 10 an overreaction? I'll concede maybe. But I think I defend if I put them at 12, you guys are still annoyed at me, but you're a little less annoyed. I think if I flip them in Madison, this is probably much less of a debate. Is that fair to say?
For me, it was, and I told you that straight up. I said you
Yeah.
can't have an unranked team that we definitely did not necessarily think high of, who's playing some very good lacrosse right now, and move them all the way to 10 versus 10 other teams who have to still be able to have the fair shot to be able to prove themselves. Like, yeah, should a natural progression they move up because they beat a team we thought was going to be really good? Yes. But to move them up past all these teams who only had one game, who won games at the same time, i.e., Madison and other teams, Ramapo at the time who won a game, we're just skyrocketing them past them versus, a one Bridgewater game that was in overtime. It wasn't like they destroyed them, 16-2, and it was like, oh my goodness, like guys, you hear about like how good this team actually is. Like that, none of that was on. And now again, if we kind of went through that process that I originally, was mad at you for, they would probably be in the same exact spot that you probably have them right now, and none of this Pingery talk would even be occurring.
But was it? But what you say that you guys dropping Bridgewater to unranked was the same dramatic overreaction? Like we could be honest with ourselves. We both overreacted, right? Is that fair?
No, I don't think so. I think one, it was a counteract to you being ridiculous of moving Pingree up. Like,
But
so we
but
kind
that's
of
not.
adjusted with the Bridgewater. And then again, what we did in years past when a team lost to an unranked team very early in the season, I've always kind of moved them, outside the rankings. So no, I wasn't, and knowing what they had coming up, I wasn't too concerned that they would be able to put themselves, right back, in the mix.
We didn't make religious proclamations as well.
Also very true.
What a
Well, I'm just saying
tantalizing.
you made graphics burying me and posted them on social media. I was very heated. I took a lot of shit from you guys
Not all the
2 weeks
graphics
ago.
made it to social media, Bill. Some of them stayed in house. All right.
I
You're
know,
always
but
welcome.
I was very annoyed last week, and then you weren't here, so I was even more annoyed. But here we are.
Hey, I let you have your minute last week. I didn't say anything.
I know. I know.
That's how it goes, Gil. In abstention, Billy just taking his shots. That was a scintillating little preview for what's to come when we reveal the top 20 near the end of this episode. But as we do every week, let's take us through our weekly recap where we look backwards and see the games that were. Starting off, and we'll do it chronologically because I think that just makes sense. Don Bosco beat Ramapo 8-3. In overtime, Summit defeated Seton Hall Prep 6-5. Billy Tharp, I know you had eyes on that. Give us the breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, in a season so far where, Seton Hall is struggling to string together some success, I think it was a good showing by them. But at the end of the day, Summit shows why they're the top public school in New Jersey right now, and it was a battle all the way to the end. Really, really nice job. I thought both goalies played really well. I know one of the things we had talked about after the Westfield game was, Seton Hall maybe, was lacking some goalie play in that particular game. I thought Lyons was awesome in net. some really, really big time saves. Robbie Kiewit in goal for Summit. He had an incredible game as well. And then, Quinn Hines with the game winner in overtime. Just really good job by Summit. And they were able to counteract some of the things Seton Hall did, including face-off wise. I think they had some counters to everything. I know there was a questionable moment in overtime where it looked like there might have been a questionable timeout given to Summit, but as Tony Tenman over there saw, it looked like maybe Seton Hall was offsides anyway. So I think it was one of those the game ended the right way. There probably wasn't too much controversy there. So but just a great game, and tough week for Seton Hall, 0-3, going down to heading out west to Indiana to Notre Dame, and lost two tough national games, but they're going to come back better from it. But congrats to Summit, and it was a hell of a week for Summit.
Continuing to roll down the line, also action from Tuesday. Delbarton defeated Westfield 8-7, and in another game that I watched a ton of, CBA 13, Rumson 12, Terra Nova. I know that you also were checking that one out. Tell us what you saw.
I was. I saw two of the best short teams battle it out to a one-goal game, and expecting nothing much less. I thought it was a very, very physical game, which, again, you're going to get that when those two teams show up and compete. And I thought the playmakers, because both teams have some serious, absolute playmakers, those guys really kind of, stood out at pivotal moments to kind of continue to make it a game. There's so many times throughout that game where I thought, oh, CBA is about to run away with this. Oh, Rumson's about to run away with this. And they just kept battling back and forth. Uh, Goalie play, I think, needs to improve on both sides of the ball if they're going to continue to move up our rankings here. If Rumson's going to, find themselves back into our rankings, I believe they're on the outside. Spoiler alert. But I think these two are definitely going to be able to see each other again at the short conference, and I think we're going to see something more of the same. And they're going to be much more battle tested as well. And I'm definitely looking for a very similar result. 1-2 goal game.
Tuesday was a pretty big day in the week, and a game we added to the slate, I would say fairly late in the week before we previewed it on the pod last week. West Morris in overtime, unranked at the time, West Morris, over the 13th ranked at the time, Dodgers, I believe, of Madison. Gil, what did you see there?
Yeah, I watched a bunch of this game, a little bit in and out, chasing my kids around. I'm kind of on my phone streaming some games, but got tied into this one a little bit. I think we were looking ahead at it. West Morris was 3-0 going into the week. They picked up another 3 wins this week. They always play some good competition. They're always tight with everybody on a competitive level. And just looking at we know what they can do with the face-off X with Luke Goose, and I was very impressed. I mean, Madison did a decent job with him. I think he was like 98%. What are you laughing at, Bill? Did I say his name wrong?
House.
Sorry, Gas. Either way, he's phenomenal. I think he was 98% coming into the year. Madison held him to 65%, so still obviously coming away with a win there at the X, but they did a decent job with him. Seamus Buckley looked good in goal with 12 saves. I think his first year starting in goal after taking over for, I believe, Jack Janke last year. I was impressed with West Morris overall. I mean, they've always been a tough physical team. Watching them play is always fun. They're usually stout defensively. They're good between the lines. Offensively, they're very balanced. I was looking at the stats ahead of that game, and I think I texted you guys. I wouldn't be surprised with West Morris winning, just with their stats are spread out across multiple offensive players. I think they had 6 or 7 guys put up decent points in this game versus Madison coming in with like really, 2 big playmakers, maybe a third or fourth here and there that contribute, but very isolated more so with their offensive production. And that's exactly how it kind of worked out. West Morris really spread the ball out and created a lot of plays half field and in transition. And they're the type of team that capitalizes on any mistakes. It was a little bit of a sloppy game, up and down a little bit in terms of throwing the ball away and some early turnovers. But West Morris just capitalized on it like good teams do, and proved why they're going to be where they're going to be in a little bit when we talk top 20.
I'm excited. I actually get to see West Morris later this week, so I'll be able to put eyes on a team that I haven't yet seen. So that'll be good. at least for me to be able to chime in maybe next weekend. Sticking with some Wednesday action now, and I know we alluded to it in the opening face-off, but Gil St. Bernard's 7 and the Ping Show 4. Gil, let's just stay right there with you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pause the Ping Show description for a little bit until they can start putting up some more goals. I think they, like Tharp said, that defensively they're very stout. They've been keeping a lot of games tight and low scoring. This was a very low scoring game for a while. I mean, 7-4 is not high scoring by any means, but it was a few goals towards the end for Gil. But it was back and forth, and it was a defensive struggle. Not overly impressed with either offense right now, really, just in terms of what I was seeing. Both really kind of just testing each other out. It felt like it wasn't a lot of getting to the cage and really being threatening on either end. But, defense was strong for both, I think. But, yeah, I mean, Pingree, to get them back up, and they have some games coming up where they can start to figure some things out offensively, I think. But yeah, Gil, I think, like Bill said, they played a lot of out of state. We haven't been able to see them too much and really see what they have in state. So it was a good win for them to pick that up 7-4.
Our last midweek game that we had previewed last week, Mountain Lakes 11 and Bergen Catholic 7. And that was all before we headed into Saturday when Mountain Lakes then traveled, or actually, I don't even know where this game was, if it was at Lakes or at Chatham. So I apologize for that.
Chatham.
It was at Chatham. Chatham 11 and Mountain Lakes 6. Ridgewood also on Saturday defeated Bergen 10-7. And then in the game that I think that we all kind of were intent on seeing what was going to happen, and it certainly did not disappoint. Summit 6, Scotch Plains Fanwood 5 in overtime. The Moose Train just rolling on.
It was a great game. I only got to see parts and pieces. I was on a way to a game of my own, but that I was surprised. Scotch Plains went up early. I thought they dominated the time possession, especially in the first half. I think it was 2-0 at halftime. Maybe two, at least after the first quarter, it was 1-0, 2-0. But it was really impressive to see this them dominate. And then again, I missed the most of the third quarter and a good chunk of the fourth quarter, and then that last turnover from Scotch Plains on a clear breakaway, where it really was almost like a 6-on-3, 6-on-4 situation. They kind of just threw a bad pass. One guy maybe thought he was supposed to get the pass, but he's thrown the other end, just ended up being a Trevor. And they were still subbing and fast break goal the other way. But that's what Summit does. That's what great teams do. They capitalize on mistakes. They make you pay for your mistakes, and they continue just to find wins. But both teams are certainly deserving of all the praise of how they're playing lacrosse right now.
That'll do it for our look in the rearview mirror. Now let's look ahead to what we have coming up this week. Tomorrow there's some Monday action down the shore. Holmdale and Rumson Fairhaven will square off. And then tomorrow night, Ocean City and Mainland will go at it in a battle of the South Shore. On Tuesday, Bergen Catholic will take on Chatham, and CBA will take on Haddonfield. Nova, what do you feel about that CBA Haddonfield game?
I've been pretty high in the group on Haddonfield the last couple weeks, and then I was like, oh, they got their first real good test to kind of make my all my chirping a little bit for them come to fruition when they played St. Augustine, but that did not play out in my favor. But at the same time, St. Augustine is a completely different animal, a much tougher animal than I think a lot of us even expected to begin with. So I can't really say like, oh, Haddonfield's not ready there, and I'm not really to justify that. So I think this is going to be my true test to see where Haddonfield is if I put them into the top 20 next week, if they are close to compete with CBA, and then obviously if they beat CBA, they certainly will be. But I am very high on Haddonfield right now. I've been hearing a lot of great things. Think they have some stud underclassmen that a lot of people might not know about yet. So it's definitely a game that I will be keeping my eye on.
Let's move on to some Wednesday action. We'll stay down the shore. Southern will take on Rumson Fairhaven. And then Thursday, we have a Glen Ridge Madison matchup. And that leads us into the weekend's action. Shawnee coming off of a nice weekend away up in New York. They are going to take on Westfield in a game, Tharp, that I think is going to have a lot of eyeballs on it as Shawnee kind of really getting its first in-state test for a team that we've had ranked pretty highly all season long.
Yeah, I mean, Shawnee, they lost a super tight one to Radnor, who is a top five public school in New Jersey, and then only one in-state opponent so far. It was one of the Cherry Hill directionals, and beat them pretty soundly. But then, like you said, Keith, this weekend, just two super impressive out-of-state wins, and again, we don't take too much account into the out-of-state stuff just because there's nothing to go against, but just names on paper, just two really impressive wins, and I think this game's going to tell us a lot about where Shawnee really is. They're scoring a ton of goals right now. I think we knew of that. Coming into the season, they would be a high goal scoring team. So I think it's a really good opportunity for them. And for Westfield, it's a chance to build off some momentum. They had an ultra competitive game with Del Barton last week, and then destroyed Montclair, who had been having a really solid start to the season. They hung 17 on Montclair. So I think this is one of the premier games of the weekend. I think that it's two top 10 teams, and I think Shawnee has a chance here if they're able to really impose their will on Westfield. They have a chance to enter that echelon of that top four teams that we've had in our rankings. With Del Barton, St. Augustine, Bosco, and Summit. I think right now Shawnee's been sitting at five, really based on potential, but they have a chance to really really open some eyes this weekend. And I'm super excited to see that game because I think it's going to be a dogfight.
Continuing with Saturday action, Madison and Chatham will square off, as will Ridgewood and Mountain Lakes. But the game that has the biggest probably name potential, given the head-to-head history and the rivalry itself, Del Barton and Seton Hall Prep. Gil, what are you looking at there?
I want to fact check our Lord and Savior real quick. Radnor is not in New Jersey.
Not in New
So
Jersey.
everybody is aware.
I said that. They said they played it was a top five public school in New Jersey. Or in America. My bad.
Got him.
Twice got him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all expect Del Barton to kind of take care of business more so than they have in this game, score-wise, at least in the last few years. This is historically a one-goal game no matter what, and it still very well could be. But just based on recent results and recent gameplay, I think we're all led to believe that Del Barton's going to win this game by more than one goal. But this is a huge opportunity for Seton Hall Prep, obviously, to jump back into the mix with a great win, or if they can be in that one goal loss territory, show that they're still a top team in the state, which I think we all believe that they are. It's just they need to produce it on the field still. But I think the other two games you mentioned, Keith, are still really big as well. I think Madison has an opportunity to move back up after moving down this week after the West Morris loss. To play a tough competitor in Chatham, who struggled a little bit with Northern Highlands. We were all surprised by, so that there's an opening there for Madison. And same thing with Lakes. I think Lakes has been in that territory of that back half of the top 20, where they get the wins that they should in that back half or lower, but they haven't really had that marquee win yet for them to get back to where we had them initially at, I think, number 7 preseason. Win over Ridgewood could definitely get them working back that way.
No doubt about it. Yes, Bill Tharp, your hand is raised. Thank you for being so courteous. You may speak.
I just, I know we were talking about this very little before the show, but I figure it's a good topic. I don't know if it's just because Nova's not coaching there anymore and it's not on like the front of our minds, but is this like the least hyped or the least like anticipated Seton Hall Del Barton game in the last, I don't know, decade? Like I feel like usually leading up to it, there's you see the clips on Instagram and hype on Twitter, and I think it's just not there right now. And I don't know if, like I said, it's just because Seton Hall is just not a part of our everyday lives anymore. So I'm curious, at your guys' thoughts. Do you guys feel the same way, or am I just a little, since I'm actually in season, am I just a little my head in the sand a little bit?
No, I think you're right. I think the general expectation, just based on how Seton Hall's been the last few games, is Del Barton's going to take care of them. But at the same time, I mean, and nothing against Westfield because they're obviously phenomenal right now, but I don't think we expected them to be 1 goal within Del Barton in that game either. So same thing here with Seton Hall Prep. Like we might not expect it, but Seton Hall could very well be in that game. I remember talking to Tony over the years at Seton Hall. It's like no matter how each team is doing at any point in a given year, when they go out to play each other, it's just a totally different atmosphere, a totally different environment, preparation, compete level in general. So really kind of toss out the last few games, I think, and it's anybody's game really. But I agree with you, Bill. I think just the general perception is Del Barton's so high right now. Seton Hall's low for relative where they've been, obviously, since last year. But again, I think this game, you can kind of toss some of that stuff out.
And I mean, I'll chime in on that too, because I think I agree with that premise wholeheartedly. It's the reason why this will be the first time I say it on the pod this year, but no doubt over the next 3 and 4 weeks, I'll say it again. It's why county tournament games are my favorite games of the season, with all apologies to the state tournament, because when you play a rivalry game, anything can happen. Just throw a lot of stuff out, because the emotion that comes with these traditional rivalry games, whether it's county tournament or, even though obviously Del Barton and Seton Hall are not in the same county, just the rivalry and the history between the schools and the bad blood, of some of the off the field stuff that's happened over the last, half decade. It's like you can't divorce yourself from that emotion when you're in the middle of it, and it just makes for some fantastically entertaining lacrosse. And I'll actually use that to plug something that we have coming out this week in a overtime episode on Wednesday. I believe Gil's going to drop it. That same premise is like something that we talk about as officials. It's I don't really care what you're reading. We talk about it in pre-games. Oh, don't worry about what the papers say. This is a rivalry game. Anything can happen. That's stuff that we would talk about in a pregame. So the teaser there is Mr. Terranova and Dave Duban and I had a chance to officiate a game last Friday, and we videotaped our pregame as we were in the car driving out to the game. So if you ever wonder what are the officials actually talking about to get ready to go officiate a game, you'll get about 30 minutes worth of that dropping into your feed on Wednesday morning on both YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. So all that said, let's transition into our top 20. And I've kind of synthesized things as I think I'm going to do every week. Because if people aren't looking at our physical top 20, it might be tough to follow. So I'll take us, starting at 20, and I'll work us towards number 10 here. Kingsway has dropped all the way down to number 20. Pingree comes in at number 19, and they are down from 13. Southern, they pop into the top 20 for the first time this season at 18. Madison goes from 12 to 17. Gill is up to number 16 from 20. West Morris also popping into the top 20 for the first time at number 15. Mountain Lakes moves back up to 14. Glen Ridge 13. Bridgewater up 3 spots to number 12. CBA stands pat at number 11, as does Seton Hall Prep at number 10. So, Gil, you dropped Kingsway all the way out of your top 20, and that is kind of the reason why they are all the way down there at 20. Take us through why you did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to be the first to admit preseason, I kind of followed the hype with ranking them. I followed guidance of my cohorts here. And looking back at last year, they had a phenomenal year last year. I think they were 17-1 overall with that loss coming against Westfield in the Group 4 final, and that's a great season. And the knock on them's always been their strength of schedule, but they did have that Shawnee win last year, who we have in the top 5 this year. So looking at that, it's like, okay, they can play, obviously, and they brought a ton of guys back where we're looking at this year thinking, okay, they'll be up there. So between talking with you guys, between all that we knew from last year and what they bring back, that early season ranking made sense. And then just kind of the more and more that came out, scores, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, we start to take that into account a little bit. And, I think the first knock on them was the 8-5 win over Mainland. I think the knock on them has been their strength of schedule, but we always said they'll be 16-0 up until they play Shawnee, or 50, whatever it would be. They'd be undefeated until they play Shawnee later this year. Before they play Shawnee, Southern, Moorestown, like that's their stretch of tough games, but they should dominate their schedule until then. So they come out with an 8-5 win second game into the year. not super impressive. Talking to coaches in the area, watching some, what we can of them, not super impressive. That was first knock. They took care of a couple games, and then they come in this week with a 6-5 win over Eastern. That's to me a bad loss, and I think or a bad win. Sorry. Everybody, like we'll talk about Chatham in a little bit, getting by Northern Highlands, things like that. But Kingsway doesn't have a marquee win to counter anything because they're not going to get one until later in the year, if anything. So a 6-5 win over Eastern, and not to knock on Eastern, but they lost to Ocean City 16-5. They lost to Princeton 13-12. So then to only get a 6-5 win over Eastern for Kingsway. Plus everything else going on. I think just we have to factor in these other teams now, where I'm looking at who we're going to bump up. Westmar Central, I think, deserves to be up there. Mountain Lakes keeps winning. They work their way back up top. Madison, we got to see them play more. They're still up there. They have a big win. Southern 7-0. We were going to bump them into the top 20. Like, we need to make room for these teams who are deserving of it. And Kingsway, they're undefeated still. They haven't done anything wrong by losing, but they're not impressing me with their wins. Where and looking at it now, I've seen enough of these teams play. You hate to compare scores only, but sometimes that's all we have to go on for right now. But I look at these other teams, I'm like, I think Pingree would beat Kingsway. I think Southern would beat them. I think Madison would beat them. So I'm looking at who's ahead of them, thinking who are they going to beat in that group? And right now, I don't see that.
Something we talked about quite a bit already, so we don't need to belabor it. But and hopefully we can maybe put it to bed at this point. William Jesus Starpowski's infatuation with Pingree came crashing down as they dropped from 13 to 19 because of that loss to Gill. And can we all mutually agree now that things have normalized and now we feel like everything is copacetic here relative to Pingree's stance in the rankings?
I think overall, we've all had our own gripes with each other's individual rankings, but I think we're all pretty okay with how the final turned out today, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's great when you got three people doing it, and it's easy. You can counteract some things in some certain places, and I think every one of us had something that we probably didn't like with someone else's rankings. But then when we saw the final rankings out, I was like, okay, like yeah, maybe this spot here, one or two spot here and there, but like overall, I was like, yeah, this honestly makes sense, and I totally get it. And it's still only week 3 of doing these, so it'll continue to sort itself out. But I thought it was overall, I thought the final rankings were the most together than they've been in even since last year.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we were. I think this is just like a lot of testosterone filled group chat lately. So I think we were all ready to kill each other, and then we were like, "Oh, this is actually fine." So yeah, I would agree. I would use my time just to say, I got to watch Wes Morris play. Also, that team is awesome. I watched them just go have an 8-0 corner on Bernard. So I think Wes Morris is the real deal, and I'm happy to welcome them to the top 20. I think they're a super fun team to watch.
that's so lovely of you, William Tharp III. I'm gonna see how many different names I can call you throughout the course of any one particular episode or the season, if somebody wants to keep
It's a
track.
shame you've met my father and keep calling me the third when I'm a junior.
I actually did have the pleasure to meet both of your parents the other day after officiating Rutgers Prep, and they were lovely, and your mother told me to continue to make fun of you. So I feel like I have carte blanche to just go wherever I want. So there you go. And that is a true story, by the way. That actually did happen. So I'm going to stay with Terranova because you said something, you said 1 or 2 spots here and there. And I will call you Tony Terranova, Agent of Chaos, as I give everybody the top 10, and then I'll get a little specific with you. We talked about Seton Hall Prep being at number 10. Ridgewood stays pat at number 9, as does Westfield at 8. Chatham moves down 1 spot from 6 to 7. Scotch Plains moves up 1 spot from 7 to 6. Shawnee hangs in at number 5. And Summit and Don Bosco for the 3rd straight week trade places in the poll, with Don Bosco dropping to 4, Summit to 3, and the top 2 remain unchanged. St. Aug's at 2 and Del Barton at number 1. So, Mr. Terranova, you are single-handedly responsible for the overall ranking in this poll, with Don Bosco and Summit flip-flopping each of these 3 weeks, because Tharp and Nova are holding strong at Don Bosco at number 3. Why do you keep flip-flopping?
I just keep flip-flopping based on where the teams are at and who they're playing this week, what the other teams that they have played are doing at the same time as well. So, I mean, 2 weeks ago when Bosco took Del Barn to a one-goal game, and I had them below Summit, I'm like, "Well, okay, well, this is probably a top two team, because I think incredibly highly of Del Barn since the preseason episode when I spoke about them. So like, okay, I gotta start moving these guys up. Like these guys are gonna be here. At the end, these guys are gonna get a lot of in-state wins, and everything else in between. And then as the time starts going by, then all of a sudden now Westfield is in a one-goal game with Del Barn. So I'm like, okay, maybe Del Barn just finds times to go to sleep at times, and they're not full force, and that one goal isn't as impressive. Whereas now Summit this week gets two top 10 wins. So two top 10 wins to me is very impressive versus Bosco, who now only has one top 20 win. They also lost against Iona, who CBA also lost to by almost a similar score. Bosco did a little bit better. So I'm like, okay, now maybe they're more so in the Westfield CBA range than I originally anticipated, where Summit is just kind of rolling through, close games, but they're rolling through and they're getting some big time wins. I think they're undefeated right now. Bosco, I believe they just beat IMG today, so I think they are back at 500. But before I did this rankings, they had a losing record. So for me, that was where kind of the switch just kind of keeps happening each and every week here.
And one of those top 10 wins that you mentioned for Summit came over Scotch Plains, as we had talked about, and you jumped Scotch Plains ahead of Chatham in the rankings, because you moved Scotch Plains ahead of Westfield. You moved Scotch Plains, Westfield, and Ridgewood all above Chatham this week in your poll.
Yes, I did. I thought ultimately what Scotch Plains did, losing a one-goal game, granted it was a loss, was a better and more impressive showing to me than Chatham winning and squeaking out a one-goal win versus Northern Highlands, where they were losing for most of the game. And then when I was like, Westfield's kind of one-goal loss to the Barn is also very impressive to me. I can move them up, and then all of a sudden Ridgewood and Chatham were side by side, and Ridgewood had head-to-head wins, so I had to make sure that I properly adjusted and put Ridgewood above Chatham. So that's kind of why they were there for me.
Mr. Tharp, your rebuttal.
Chatham beat Westfield. So
Do I have Westfield above Chatham though?
yeah,
Yeah.
and you had
Side by
in
side?
your rankings, you had Westfield, Chatham, Ridgewood. So then, shouldn't you have bumped Chatham back over Westfield?
Hold on, looking at my rankings now.
Because you said you had in the perfect world you would have went Westfield, Chatham, Ridgewood, but Chatham just lost to Ridgewood, so you had to flip them. But if you were set in stone, wouldn't Chatham get the bump over Westfield?
Hold on, moving over. So it ended up being Scotch Plains, Westfield, Ridgewood, Chatham. So no, because I had Westfield above both of those and Chatham
But
next to
you
them.
said you had Chatham above Ridgewood, and then you flipped them. So, but if you
Right,
had
at the eight and
if you
nine.
kept it right, but if you kept Chatham there, wouldn't they have gotten to flip over Westfield because they already beat Westfield? Like,
No,
wouldn't you rather flip forward instead of backwards?
no, I get what you're saying, and if in that regard, yes, it would make sense, but that is not how I was viewing it at that time. I was viewing the Westfield and Scotch Plains, and then Ridgewood and Chatham, more so than looking at all four in a group or one versus the other. But yes, if I was looking in that perspective, it would make perfect sense, and then yes, I would have to do it that way. But at the time, that's not how my process or mind was working. But it was a very good point.
I
So
just,
okay, sorry.
Block. I apologize. I just was Nova made a point. I'm just curious, and this is not confrontational. I'm just truly asking. In our preseason meeting, you had said how, like, if Del Barton doesn't win by 5 or 6 goals, you'd be very curious about what happened. And now that Del Barton's basically 10 games into their season, do you still feel the same way? Or I know you kind of touched on maybe not. I'm just curious, like how your thought on Del Barton has maybe morphed throughout the season.
Um, I still feel that way. I do think I do have to see St. Augustine a little bit more. I still do feel very highly on Dublin. I think they're the clear-cut favorite. And I do think that they should win the game by multiple goals. But St. Augustine, man, they have just been an absolute unit. I've got maybe 3 quarters in different games watching them play, a little bit of Haddonfield, a little bit of Notre Dame, and I'm like, and this team can just freaking flat out play. So in that regard, it has to be a little bit tougher. Yes, they had a 1 goal game to Bosco, so like yes and no, but I also know that from experience as well that the Barn is always a team that plays their best lacrosse at the end of the year. There's no question about it. They don't get worse. They've had their moments for sure, but more times than not, they're going to be playing their best lacrosse. The coaches aren't going to be playing a bunch of extra guys, to appease parents and things like that. They're going to go out there and do what needs to get done.
You just kind of
I,
led this in a direction that I wanted to go because I don't vote in the top 20. I don't create a poll, so I just am here to kind of like look and direct you all to comment. And as I looked at the date at which we are doing this right now, so obviously it's April 12th as we record it. There are 3 teams that I look at this top 20 and I say, and I say this without knowing what their schedule is coming up. If you're going to get them, you better get them now. Mountain Lakes is our 14th team, Bridgewater is our 12th team, and CBA is 11. I don't know what their schedules look like, but if you said to me, make a prediction about what's going to happen in the top 20 between now and like May 5th, May 10th, I would say those 3 teams are going to go this direction north, okay, in the poll, because at least from a coaching perspective, to what you just said, those teams, Lakes and Bridgewater, don't get worse as seasons go on. They just get better. God forbid we should actually coach kids and educate kids to a point where they're better at the end than when we started. God forbid that be the point of education. And CBA just came out with that 13-12 win. CBA doesn't have John Littleback yet. As soon as he comes back in, I mean, if they could score 13 goals on pretty decent teams, other teams may not have the ball very much. So I would say those 3 teams, if you said to me, what would you think? I would say they're going to be moving up the polls, but that's just me. So we'll see.
and I just because I know what we're talking about, I did watch the St. Augustine Haddonfield game, and holy crap, St. Augustine is so impressive, man. Dude, their defenders, man. If you turn your back, they're hunting double teams. Their goalie is super active. I don't know if you've refed them yet, Keith, or if you have Nova, but like they're so fun to watch. Like they truly play it like every coach, especially you guys in these products was like, we're training you for college, blah blah blah. Like I would say St. Augustine plays as close to like a Division 1 type of style that I've seen anybody play this year. They are so freaking impressive. And like they made a good Haddonfield team look very average. And I just want to say, like, I got to watch St. Augustine, and it's like I was blown away. I got to watch. I've watched Seton Hall this year. I haven't watched Del Barton close enough, but I think St. Augustine. I agree with you, Nova. I think St. Augustine is a problem in non-public this year.
All right, let's move on to our picks. It's still pretty tight over there. Both of you guys went 3-2 last week. Gil, you remain 1 game up on Tharp. You are 9-6. Gil, Tharp is 8-7. And our games this week, a mishmash from around the state. Let's get it started. Gil, I'll have you go first since you are ahead. Holy Spirit takes on Washington Township.
I have to credit Bill again with just another week of great pick'ems, and I'm gonna start this one. Holy Spirit got the win last year, 8-7, but I'm gonna go with the ones who call themselves the Township.
Tharp?
I'm also going to take Washington Township. I think they have a phenomenal face-off guy.
You are the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, not anymore apparently.
Township.
That was a
All
good
right.
one. You were saving that one up.
You just put that one right on the tee, right there in Augusta. Good job on a golf Sunday. Our next game, Monroe, and you're both Anthony and Gil, place where you've called home for a couple of years, Montgomery.
Okay,
Tharp, you go
trivia time.
first.
When was the last time these two teams played? One of you was there.
2017,
Nailed it.
May 20th.
2017. That was the playoffs. Montgomery legend Dan Angles, I think, had 4 goals.
Legend.
Shout out to your boy Dan Angles.
Love
I'm
Danny
gonna go with
Ingles.
Montgomery. I think they're super well coached. Jamar Thigpen does an incredible job with them. We had a chance to see them in a scrimmage. Super organized defensively. I'm gonna go with the Cougars.
I don't know if I try to steal one on you or just stay par, but I think it's going to be a gritty game. I think the GMC teams have a way to be gritty and get things done. I hate to pick against my old home, but I'm going to go Monroe and try to steal one back on you.
Oh, okay. Hamilton West and Wilberforce, our next game. Gil, you go first.
If you have force in your name, you're not to be reckoned with. I'm going to go with Wilberforce.
Billy?
Wilberforce is a wagon this year. I guess I was looking at their scores. They have some like freshman or something who's like got like 7 points a game. So I'm gonna go with Wilberforce. Watch out for those guys.
My boss's son is one of the coaches at Hamilton West. He said they're having a lot of fun over there, and to see them get some wins on the schedule it makes me very happy. So we'll see what happens there. Next game, Westwood and Mawa. Billy, you go first.
I'm gonna go to Mawa. I'm gonna go with Mawa. Good friends with one of their assistant coaches, so gonna go with boys at Mawa.
I
Gil?
will be going Mawa as well.
And last game of the week, Shawnee and Westfield. Gilberto.
This was a great game to sneak in here, Billy. This is a tough one. I mean, we have on paper we have Shawnee at 5, and expectation is that they can get this one done. But Westfield's doing some really impressive things, and I told my boys on Instagram that I'm 100% Team Dubfield this year. So shout out Dubfield David. This one's for you. I know you're listening because I'm on today, and I'm going Dubfield.
Tharp?
It was between this or Seton Hall and Del Barton. I thought we'd both just pick Del Barton, so I'm gonna go with Shawnee. I think go Renegades. So go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Shawnee, but I do expect the game to be competitive. But give me Shawnee.
So that'll do it for our picks. And before we get to the stall warning question, and we're just over the 2-minute mark here in the metaphorical analogy of our lacrosse game every week. I do want to give a shout out to the Paramus coaches. I officiated Rutgers Prep and Paramus this week, and I thought, I mean, Tharp, you guys came out with the victory in Somerset, and I have. There's not a lot of teams in the state that I have like never officiated before, and Paramus was one of those teams. And I really had no idea what to expect going into the game from Paramus. And I spoke to their coaches near to the end of the game, and I said, "Boys, what you're doing here, like." I was impressed. I was thoroughly impressed with what they were doing. Multiple defenses, everybody, the communication was great. I thought there was not things that you would see as kind of red flags often as a game starts to maybe slip and now it's a 5, 6, 7 goal game in a fourth quarter and the other team scores. Are defenders yelling at each other? Is a goalie really mad at somebody and the communication starts to break down? I didn't see any of that from Paramus. It was, good goals were getting scored and they were talking about, hey, like that's what we talked about at practice. Like it was obvious the culture of the program was something that the kids were buying into. And to me, that just elevates the floor for everybody of lacrosse in the state. And I'm a big fan of it. Gil, what do you got?
We missed one important piece of information.
What was that?
Today.
What's that?
I
don't understand.
Can we get a group round of applause for our man, Bill Tharp, getting teed up this week? Not different game, but getting, as Keith Glock would refer to, banged.
I would never refer to
Tell
it
us
that
about
way.
it.
I would never refer to it that way. I would refer to it as being penalized. Thank you. But Mr. Tharp, you did receive a penalty this week from the esteemed officials of the New Jersey
Speaking of
Interscholastic
culture.
Lacrosse.
There
That's
goes
great.
that sportsmanship award.
What happened, Bill?
How do I want to approach this? Okay. I said to you guys after the game, I was truly filled with regret. It was I didn't say anything like absurd. I made a dumb joke at a poorly timed moment. And you know, I shouldn't have done it. And I made a dumb joke, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. It was a dumb decision, and I regret it. And yeah. Yep,
This is
that's
part
it.
of your
I don't feel
Bill.
again. I don't
I'm
want
just
to end
trying
the
to set.
podcast like
I'm
this.
trying to set you up, buddy. I'm trying to set you up for
Nope, no, I'm
success.
not taking the bait. I'm not taking the
I'm trying
bait.
to set you up for success. This is public recognition of your problem, and you're doing a great job. You're taking steps forward to being a better sideline presence for your team. So
I shook the ref's hand at halftime. I said, "I'm sorry for being an asshole." He said, "We're cool." We moved on.
Love
beautiful.
it.
All right, Keith.
That
stall us
represents
up.
progress. The stall warning. April 1st, April Fool's Day, we're getting a little bit stale with the April Fool's Instagram posts of so-and-so has just announced that they're a Division I program, blah, 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 blah. And every year it's the same things. But I thought, as we're now a couple weeks past that, if you were to look at who currently does not have Division I men's lacrosse, but really should, and that you would want them to have it. Give me two teams who you would want to have Division I lacrosse next. I will start with Tharp.
So I originally texted my answer to the group, and I'm changing one. I'm still going to go with the University of Hawaii. I think that would just be cool. And then
Logistical
I think
nightmare.
I know. Uh, I think Tufts. Like everyone's talked about it, but like let's I think I think Tufts at the D1 level would be electric. I think that's that's like the could Alabama beat the Cleveland Browns or whatever. It's like,
I think the
could
question
Tufts
was
be
who should add men's lacrosse, though, Keith.
no, it
Is
was
that right?
D1 lacrosse, right?
This is typical Tharp, just taking an end around.
All right, then
to,
Ryder. I said Ryder. Okay,
No,
Ryder was my other one. I
You're
support New Jersey schools. Go Bronx, Ryder.
Appreciate it.
Listen, there's nobody in America that would be happier if Ryder added men's lacrosse than me because I could walk there. Okay, that would be fantastic. But I'm negating your Ryder vote and I'm accepting your Tufts vote. It's actually a creative solution to the question. So you are allowed. Good job. Nova, what do you got?
I've got Clemson. Everyone who knows me knows I'm a massive Clemson fan. So definitely Clemson. If you already look what their women's program has done when they got women's in their top 10, top 15 pretty much every year since they've had it, I feel the men's lacrosse program would be in a very very similar boat. And then the other school I have is the University of Miami, keeping the ACC there. University of Miami would certainly be a destination that a lot of lacrosse players would certainly be interested in going to.
Gil?
I'm gonna go horns up, Texas. I think their club programs generate a lot of hype and interest socially, and has a lot of success around them. And I think we all talk about SEC schools would be great, but I think there's a lot more to that in terms of getting that whole conference, or in general just schools down south like that, more lacrosse. But I think realistically, I was going to go between USC, UCLA, or Oregon. I think one of the West Coast schools in the Big Ten would be huge with the growth of the game out there, and I think would be a massive uptick in just lacrosse in general, and East Coast kids going west, and then just in-state and West Coast talent being able to stay home, closer to home. Another interesting one I thought of late was UConn, though. Another big New England-based school, but I know, Keith, you're going to get into that area next.
Yeah, but not for the same reasons, though. Boston College was the first team that I had thought of. Obviously, the BC women's program, fantastic. But the reason for adding Boston College was kind of a combination of that. There was lacrosse on the men's side at Boston College at one time, so there is some tradition there, combined with the success on the women's side. So lacrosse is a sport that they value. But I was thinking that no matter what school I was going to pick, there was definitely going to be one from the ACC, because the ACC does not have an automatic qualifier to the NCAA tournament. And what can happen is if the ACC adds another school, and then that obviously brings in another AQ spot, that will add another at-large spot. So the tournament itself will end up getting bigger, which I feel like we're like 2 schools away from the tournament being like pretty amazing, right? I mean, every year we look at like, first 2 or 3 teams out at the NCAA level, and we're like, man, I really wish we could have snuck, that 4th Ivy team in there, or, somebody else from the Big Ten or the ACC, whatever that's going to be. And the other place that I would add would be Northwestern, because to add another team to the Big Ten, I think would be good. I'll be interested to see over the next number of years, as NIL grows, and lacrosse obviously is the only Division I sport at Johns Hopkins, that are they able to sustain at the same level at the other programs that they are directly competing against in men's lacrosse from an NIL perspective, and would adding other fully affiliated teams from the conference give Johns Hopkins the ability, not that they would want to leave the Big Ten, because I don't think that they would at all by any stretch of the imagination, but 10 years from now, budgetary wise, that may become more of a reality to move into a conference like maybe the A10, where they're still competing against like-minded schools from an academic perspective, but maybe a little closer in monetary gain. So who knows? We're also just shooting from the hip here, and none of it really matters, but a good discussion nonetheless.
Another school that would do absolutely incredible is a school like Stanford. I think in lacrosse community especially, there's definitely a big contingent of people that really value academics. It's why lacrosse is definitely one of the few sports out there where it's the Ivies are been a dominant force for many years. And I think you have a school like Stanford, who many people considered one of the best, if not the best, college in the country outside the Ivies. Would get a ton of high academic students flocking to that area.
I agree. You'd think about what a Big West lacrosse conference would look like if you went USC, UCLA, Stanford, Utah, Denver, Air Force. That would be pretty electric, I would say.
Don't forget Hawaii.
Yeah,
Hawaii, of course.
Hawaii could spend 2 months living on the mainland so that they could get all their games in. Play 1 home game a year. Boys,
they need refs out there, Keith.
Buddy, I'll get on a plane. You want to send me out there for a couple of games?
Sign me up. On
January 20th? Yeah, my cold ass hands will take a trip. No problem.
Just pay room and board, and you don't even need the reffing fee.
All right, let's not get crazy now.
I would do that for a trip to Hawaii easily.
I'll take the reffing fee. The plane ride would suck.
Yeah, you need another TV in your house anyway.
Take it easy over there, would you? That'll do it for this edition of the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. This has been a fun hour, boys, as it always is. We will collaborate once again next Sunday night so that we can release all of this to everybody again on Monday mornings. Have a great week of lacrosse, and we wish everybody a healthy and successful week in the world of New Jersey high school lacrosse. See you, boys.
Have a good week, everyone.